daily intelligence podcast. This is episode 32. And since it's Monday, let's be honest. Even the stock market probably wishes it had one more day off. But here we are, and starting the week with the right intelligence, well, that's a much better cure than another cup of coffee. Today is Monday, August 18th, 2025, and we're covering the intelligence brief for yesterday, Sunday, August 17th. Our mission is always to cut through the noise, give you the most important nuggets of knowledge, and connect the dots so you're not just informed, but really well-versed. Okay, let's dive in.
Right, so looking at yesterday's daily intelligence report, the first thing that jumps out is the flag. Threat level, moderate.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't signaling some immediate five-alarm crisis. It's more about a persistent backdrop. Regional conflicts, trade friction, climate disasters. These things pose a sustained risk to, well, stability and supply chains globally.
Okay, moderate but persistent. What about confidence in the info?
Good question. The report has a confidence 3 flag. That means the information's been cross-checked, multiple sources pointing the same way. But, and this is important, there's still some uncertainty acknowledged, especially around events that are still unfolding or things happening behind closed doors.
Got it. So, solid, but with caveats for evolving situations. What's the big picture summary? The BLUF.
Yeah, the BLUF bottom line up front, it really paints a picture of widespread global uncertainty. And a lot of that traces back to the Alaska Summit's failure, that meeting between Presidents Trump and Putin. Well, it didn't deliver the Ukraine ceasefire everyone hoped for, and that sent immediate ripples. We're seeing market volatility jump, key regional developments shifting, even some unexpected opportunities popping up. The main takeaway right from the start, just how incredibly interconnected everything is.
That interconnectedness.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. The fallout from Alaska really drives that home, doesn't it? How one diplomatic event can just domino across the globe. So where does it get really interesting? What's the immediate impact we saw?
Well, the lack of a ceasefire agreement had very direct market reactions. The intelligence shows investors almost instantly started piling into energy and defense stocks. At the same time, they were selling off assets in emerging markets. It was a classic flight to perceived safety.
So energy and defense up, emerging markets down. Any specific numbers?
Yeah, Brent crude, for example, jumped 2%. Pure speculation on potential supply disruptions down the line. Meanwhile, the 10-year Treasury yield held fairly steady around 4.3%. But the movement was definitely towards commodities and defense. The implication is pretty clear. Portfolios need to consider hedging for commodity-driven inflation and just broader geopolitical risk. It's a shift in confidence.
A definite risk-off move. Before we continue, here's something worth knowing. This podcast is powered by NextSight, a global investigations and intelligence leader. Their open-source OSINT platform, SiteConnect, powers these reports and allows for deep customization. From complex international investigations to high-level corporate intelligence, their work operates on another level, combining speed, precision, and verified accuracy. Learn more at www.next-site.com. Okay, so the summit failed on Ukraine. Where are we seeing the diplomatic energy shift now, especially regarding Kiev?
Europe is definitely stepping up. We're seeing French President Macron and German Chancellor Scholz making very public pledges of support for President Zelensky. This is happening right before his visit to Washington. It looks like a highly coordinated diplomatic push.
Coordinated how? What's the goal?
The aim seems twofold. First, solidify international backing for Ukraine right now. Second, and this is crucial, they're lobbying hard for a long-term security guarantee framework, something kind of like NATO's Article 5, offering a more enduring protective structure beyond just immediate aid shipments.
And how is that playing out with the public in Europe? Is there support for this?
Very much so, based on the People's Hearsay section. Social media sentiment was quite positive towards Macron and Scholz accompanying Zelensky. We saw comments like, "Finally a show of unity, let's hope Washington listens." It suggests a real public appetite for, well, decisive action and European leadership on this.
Interesting. Shows the public wants more than just talk. As you listen, remember that NextSight's capabilities extend well beyond reporting. Their OSINT specialists and investigative teams connect dots across borders, validate sources, and transform fragmented information into actionable strategies. Now, this tension isn't just a Europe-Russia thing. How are these wider geopolitical currents stirring things up in the Middle East?
Things are definitely heating up there, and the report flags several items as high-priority threats, specifically B2 and B3 level threats. First, Hamas strongly denounced Israel's Gaza relocation plan. They called it genocide and displacement and are demanding international intervention. That's flagged B2, high threat.
Okay, strong language, high threat. What else?
Simultaneously, Israel conducted a strike on a power station south of Yemen's capital, Samuza. They claimed it was being used by Iran-aligned Houthi rebels for drone operations. That's also flagged as high threat B3.
So, direct actions and sharp rhetoric. What's the risk downstream from all this?
Well, these actions directly feed the risk of oil price spikes. We already saw Brent crude move up post-Alaska. This adds fuel to that fire. It also puts pressure on Gulf stock markets. Investors are nervous about the lack of diplomatic progress, and frankly, cautious statements from energy ministers aren't helping.
Any outliers?
Yeah.
Is the whole region tense?
Interestingly, the UAE is striking a different tone. They welcomed the Alaska summit attempt, praising dialogue, that's noted as B2, but low threat, suggesting a different strategic posture.
And what are people saying on the ground? The hearsay part.
It's quite varied. We're seeing Palestinians sharing photos, difficult photos of tent camps, using hashtags like #StopGenocide. Yemeni activists are condemning the Israeli strike, warning about the humanitarian impact. And then you have Gulf investors online, lamenting market losses, but also expressing some hope that maybe UAE diplomacy can cool things down. It's a real mix.
It really highlights the human cost and the economic jitters tied to these big power moves. But it's easy to get lost in the geopolitics. How do these global trends actually hit home, maybe in places like North America or Europe, in everyday life?
That's a great point. They have very tangible impacts. Look at North America. The Air Canada strike is causing massive disruption. Flight attendants defied a back-to-work order. Result, over 1,800 flights grounded. The airline's estimated losses are around 25 million Canadian dollars per day.
Wow, and the passengers.
Frustrated, to say the least. The People's Hearsay picked up on this. One viral TikTok summed it up. First family vacation in years, and Air Canada leaves us stranded, no compensation in sight. It hits wallets and plans directly.
Yeah, that's tough. Any other immediate impacts noted?
In Europe, tragically, there was a train derailment in Denmark, near Aarhus. One person killed, dozens injured. It's suspected mechanical failure, flagged C2. Low threat in the grand scheme, but obviously devastating for those involved.
Right.
And back in North America, specifically the U.S., there's this ongoing debate about inflation clouding tariff policy. Analysts are warning the actual inflation impact of tariffs is, well, murky. It risks hurting corporate earnings, maybe even delaying needed interest rate cuts.
So potential impacts on consumer prices and the broader economy.
Exactly, and people are talking about it. A social media thread got a lot of traction warning. Tariffs are an invisible tax on consumers. Don't be fooled by political spin. Captures that public skepticism.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit. What's fascinating is how domestic pressures, political, economic, are reshaping things globally. What are we seeing in Latin America? Bolivia, for instance.
Bolivia is a perfect example. They just held a general election, but it's happening against a backdrop of crippling 19% inflation. There's huge voter disillusionment with the ruling party, and the preliminary results, they suggest no candidate is going to hit that 50% needed to win outright.
Meaning a runoff.
Highly likely, yes. And this could potentially end nearly 2 decades of leftist rule under the MAS party, the big implication. We could see a major policy pivot, maybe towards market liberalization, maybe more Western-aligned diplomacy. That affects everything from lithium mining to regional alliances.
And the Bolivian people. What's the mood?
It's electric but divided. Social media is full of people posting photos of their ink-stained fingers, proof of voting, lots of memes about change at last. But you also see nostalgia for Evo Morales from some, while others are just sharing brutal inflation charts, showing exactly why they want change. It's very polarized.
A nation at a potential turning point, driven by economic pain, and Australia. They seem to be wrestling with their own future anxieties.
They really are. Australia's grappling with what the report calls productivity and demographic anxiety. The Productivity Commission put out this stark warning. Young Australians could face a poorer future than their parents without some bold reforms.
Why? What are the drags?
Rising house prices are a huge one, climate change impacts, regulatory hurdles slowing things down. The government's response is an upcoming 3-day economic summit. They're focusing on things like AI and making it easier for workers to move where the jobs are.
Sounds sensible, but is it seen as enough?
That's the debate. Commentators like independent MP Kate Cheney are arguing for much bigger moves, like major tax reform, specifically expanding the goods and services tax, the GST, to 15%. They argue it could raise AU $24 billion a year with rebates for low-income earners to offset the impact.
That's ambitious. Politically risky too, I imagine.
Extremely. The Treasurer is already pushing back, saying the summit itself is a success just by getting people talking about productivity. Meanwhile, on Instagram and other platforms, young Aussies are sharing their worries about ever affording a home. And political pundits are slamming the government for what they see as a small target strategy, lacking boldness.
So pressure building for bigger answers there. Let's shift focus again, this time to Africa. It feels like we often get a mix of narratives there, real optimism alongside persistent challenges. What's standing out?
It's definitely a dynamic picture. On the optimistic side, Uganda just inaugurated its first large-scale gold mine. That's significant. It's projected to produce 4,000 kilograms of gold annually, potentially earning $200 million a year. The hope is this boosts exports and funds much-needed infrastructure.
How's that being received locally?
Generally celebrated. The People's Hearsay notes Ugandans sharing memes like African gold for African prosperity. Though, importantly, environmental groups are also voicing concerns, urging caution against exploitation, a necessary balance. Then there are these broader Pan-African initiatives. The African Union is running a really interesting campaign.
Oh, what's that?
They're pushing to correct world maps, urging mapmakers to use projections that actually show Africa's true vast size. It's about addressing colonial-era distortions that literally minimize the continent's representation.
Fascinating. A push for representational accuracy.
Exactly. And then there's the Trans-African Tourism and Unity campaign. It's this incredible road trip aiming to promote visa-free travel across 39 African countries by 2030. The goal is boosting trade, tourism, and just fostering a sense of Pan-African unity. Campaigners are posting their route maps online, calling on governments to tear down borders. Very aspirational.
Really positive initiatives.
Right.
Anything else?
A few other points. FIFA pledged action against racism following abuse directed at Ghanaian striker Antoine Semenyo. They're coordinating with law enforcement and social media companies. That's Flag C2, low threat, but important for social issues in sport. And on the conflict resolution front, there's tentative progress in the DR Congo. The government and M23 rebels agreed to resume peace talks in Qatar. There's even a draft agreement being discussed. That's B3, moderate threat, indicating ongoing risk but potential progress.
Okay. Quite a range of developments across Africa. And briefly, any key updates from Asia in yesterday's brief?
Yes, a few significant events. Tragically, a deadly flash flood hit Inner Mongolia in China. At least 10 people were killed, 4 missing. It's being linked to the intense monsoon season, amplified by climate change. Chinese social media users are mourning the victims and demanding better infrastructure and preparedness.
Awful news. What else?
In the world of sports, Pakistan made waves by overhauling its cricket squad for the upcoming Asia Cup. They excluded former captains Babar Azam and Mohammad Rizwan.
Oh, that would cause a stir.
Huge stir. Fans are very divided, as you'd expect. Lots of passionate debate online. And finally, a geopolitical note. Former Hong Kong pro-democracy legislator Ted Hui and his family were granted asylum in Australia. He faced charges under Hong Kong's national security law. This decision, while humanitarian, could potentially add some strain to Australia-China relations. That's noted C2, low threat for now, but something to watch.
Okay, wow. We have definitely covered a lot of ground. Markets shifting, conflicts simmering, social campaigns, domestic politics bubbling up. If we try to tie this all together, connected to the bigger picture from the analysis, what really stands out? What's the underlying story here?
Well, the correlational analysis section really synthesizes it. The failure of the Alaska summit wasn't just a headline, it was a direct trigger. It immediately caused that flight to safe haven assets, energy, and defense up because markets started pricing in longer conflict, more instability.
Right, the market reaction was step one.
Exactly. And that baseline geopolitical risk was then amplified by the specific tensions flaring in the Middle East, the Israeli strikes, the Hamas rejection of the Gaza plan. That added more upward pressure on oil prices. It shows how regional conflicts feed into global economic sentiment.
And the non-conflict events, like the Air Canada strike.
That's a great example of how seemingly domestic issues, like a labor dispute, expose the fragility of global systems. It caused significant economic ripples, reminding us how vulnerable supply chains still are.
Okay, so interconnected risks. What about the different economic moods we discussed?
That's another key theme. You see this stark contrast. There's genuine economic optimism driving projects in parts of Africa, Uganda's gold, the Pan-African visa push. But that sits against deep economic anxiety fueling political shifts in Latin America. Look at Bolivia's election and driving intense policy debates in places like Australia over productivity and tax. They're on very different emotional trajectories right now.
And domestic policy influencing markets even before action.
Absolutely. The analysis highlights how debates like Australia's economic summit, even before any laws change, are already shaping market expectations and how investors are thinking. The anticipation matters.
So putting this intelligence into action, how does the report suggest we use this?
It gives examples of recommended actions tiered by priority. So, a tier one action based on this brief might be hedging energy exposure, like maybe allocating parts of a portfolio towards oil or defense stocks, acknowledging that heightened risk.
Okay, direct financial response. What about tier two?
Tier two could be actively monitoring specific situations. For example, keeping a close eye on the election outcome in Bolivia. Why? Because a potential shift in government could drastically alter policies around critical resources like lithium. Knowing that helps anticipate market or supply chain changes.
Makes sense. Any other types of actions?
Yes, it even touches on aligning with broader social currents. For instance, given the global campaigns against racism highlighted by the FIFA incident, supporting ESG or DEI initiatives becomes strategically relevant. It's about understanding the global social landscape, not just the economic or political one. It shows how this intelligence applies across different domains.
That really brings it all together, from market hedging to monitoring elections to understanding social trends. And that concludes the Sunday, August 17th, 2025 Intelligence Brief, brought to you on this Monday, August 18th edition of The Deep Dive. In a world this interconnected, this complex, staying informed and prepared really is your best asset. So considering all the threads we've pulled today, from that failed summit impacting markets to a new gold mine sparking hope, a tense election driven by inflation, and tragic floods highlighting climate risks, it leaves us with a question, doesn't it? In a world sitting at a moderate threat level, but also filled with significant opportunities for proactive engagement, how can you use these insights, these nuggets, to better read the currents shaping our world? And maybe, just maybe, anticipate what comes next. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Spotify. Share your thoughts, like, comment, spread the word, stay informed, stay sharp, and let's make this week smarter than your average Monday.